9 logical fallacies you should avoid. When doing philosophy, the ability to reason properly is a necessary skill. Logical fallacies are mistakes in reasoning. With bad reasoning come bad arguments. Sometimes, these mistakes are genuine and unintentional, merely a lack of awareness on the part of the speaker. At other times, however, these mistakes can be very much intentional. Part of our training, as students of philosophy, is to learn how to spot fallacies. Why? First, so that when we're making an argument we avoid such mistakes. Second, so that we are better prepared to sniff out fallacies in other people's arguments. Here are 9 common types. Argument from ignorance, appeal to inappropriate authority, ad hominem, begging the question, appeal to emotion, appeal to majority, appeal to pity, appeal to force, and irrelevant conclusion. Let us now look at them one by one. Number 1. Argument from ignorance. Examples of the argument from ignorance fallacy are, you cannot prove unicorns exist. Therefore, they do not. Or, you cannot prove unicorns do not exist. Therefore, they do. Ignorance, here, means, lack of evidence to the contrary. One form of this fallacy states that something is true, because it has not yet been proven false. Another form states that something is false, because it has not yet been proven true. The form of the fallacy. Let X stand for unicorns exist. Then, we get the following forms. A. X is false because you cannot prove that it is true. Or, B. X is true because you cannot prove that it is false. We can replace the variable X above with any proposition. Try a few propositions of your own and see how it works. More examples. Let X stand for God exists. It would be a fallacy to state that God exists is false because you cannot prove that God exists is true. A more natural way of saying the same thing would be, God does not exist because you cannot prove that God exists. Here's another one. Let X stand for there is life on Mars. The fallacy would state that there is life on Mars because you cannot prove that there is no life on Mars. Here's one final example. Let X stand for it will be raining in exactly 6 weeks and 2 days. You cannot prove that it will be raining in exactly 6 weeks and 2 days. But it would be a fallacy to state that it will not be raining in exactly 6 weeks and 2 days, because we don't know yet. Number 2. Appeal to inappropriate authority. Or, as it is also known, ad verecundiam. According to Albert Einstein, who's a genius, the best way to treat a headache is to drink 3 doses of cow urine. The fallacy. Einstein may be a genius in theoretical physics. This does not mean he's an equally brilliant doctor or physician. The form of the fallacy. Let X stand for an expert in field Y. Let Z stand for X's position on some issue that does not fall under field Y. We then get the following form. According to X, who's an authority on Y? Z. Therefore, Z is true. We can replace the above variables with other propositions. Here are a few more examples of appeal to inappropriate, or false, authority. Example number 1. Let X stand for the Prime Minister. Let Y stand for social housing. Let Z stand for Nokia make better phones than Apple. The Prime Minister is an expert on social housing. He also says Nokia make better phones than Apple. It would be a fallacy to conclude that, therefore, Nokia make better phones than Apple. Example number 2. Let X stand for the Archbishop. Let Y stand for canon law. Let Z stand for the Nashville Gospel Singers have the best guitarist in the history of music. According to the Archbishop, who's an expert on canon law, the Nashville Gospel Singers have the best guitarist in the history of music. It would be a fallacy for us to conclude that, therefore, the Nashville Gospel Singers have the best guitarist in the history of music because the Archbishop says so. The third fallacy. Against the person. Or as it is often called, ad hominem. Examples. Jake has horrible hygiene, and smells exceptionally rancid. His environmental forecast, with regards to global warming, is nonsense. We just caught Mandy stealing an apple from the kitchen. Her argument, that stealing is wrong, is rubbish. The fallacy. Also known as argument against the man, this is a type of irrelevant conclusion. Ad hominem seeks to attack someone's position by attacking the character or personal traits of the opponent, rather than the argument. Such an attack is based on prejudice or feelings that are irrelevant to the argument. The form of the fallacy. Person X makes claim Y. The circumstances or character of person X are unsatisfactory, or X does not act according to Y. Therefore, claim Y is implausible or unlikely. More examples. Ad hominem. The abusive form. This attacks the opponent's character, personality, morality, or competence. However, these are irrelevant to the argument. Example. The Minister for Transport is an arrogant, detestable person, so his solutions to solving traffic are deluded. Yes, the minister may be arrogant. He may be detestable. And, yes, his solutions may be deluded. But there is no correlation between the two. We're basing the conclusion on our dislike of the person. Ad hominem. The circumstantial form. This attacks the motivation of an opponent, claiming it's a result of personal circumstances, leading to a bias in that person's judgment. Example. The mayor just bought a bicycle and wants to use it. Of course, that is his motivation to turn the town center into a no-traffic area. Fallacy number 4. Begging the question. Or, as it is also known, circulus in demonstrando. God exists because the Bible says so. The Bible is true because God wrote it. The fallacy. Also known as arguing in a circle, the fallacy of begging the question occurs when an argument assumes the position that is in the question, without proof. In the example just cited, one must accept the premise God exists, because that's what the Bible says to be true, for the claim to be true. The form of the fallacy. X. Because Y. Y. Because X. Here are some examples. Number 1. Salvator Mundi, by Leonardo, is the greatest painting in the world because it's the most expensive painting ever sold. While it is true that Salvator Mundi is the most expensive painting ever sold, that does not mean that it is also inherently the best painting. The argument starts with an assumption, and restates the claim as proof of its truth. Number 2. The iPhone is a mobile phone by Apple because Apple is the maker of the iPhone. The second half of the sentence is simply a rewording of the first half, in reverse order. Number 3. Abortion is evil because murder is evil. This example of begging the question assumes that abortion is murder, and proceeds to state the claim as proof of its truth. Fallacy number 5. Appeal to emotion. Or, as it's also known, ad passiones. Father Christmas must be a real person. It would be so sad if he wasn't. The fallacy. The fallacy of appeal to emotion is committed when someone tries to manipulate emotions to make their case, rather than building a valid, rational argument. Appeal to emotion may invoke fear, hatred, happiness, pity, sadness, pride, etc. For instance, many adverts appeal to emotion to sway consumers into becoming customers. Note that, while valid rational arguments may inspire emotions, the fallacy of appeal to emotion happens when emotion is used instead of reasoned argument, as a way to convince people. The form of the fallacy. X is true because if X were false, we would have an emotional reaction. More examples. You should always finish everything on your plate. Think of all the starving children in this world. The afterlife must be real. The thought of there being nothing is unbearably depressive. Fallacy number 6. Appeal to majority. Or as it's also known, ad populum. Here's an example of appeal to majority in advertising. 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. The fallacy is also known by several other names, such as appeal to popularity, argument from majority, argument from consensus, bandwagon fallacy, appeal to common belief, democratic fallacy, mob appeal, and appeal to masses. The fallacy concludes that a proposition must be true because many or most people believe it. It appeals to the tastes, beliefs, or values of a group of people. In Latin, populum. The form of the fallacy. Most people believe that X is true. Therefore, X must be true. More examples. The majority chose this government. The majority is always right, therefore, everything this government does is right. All of my friends have started a no-fat diet. Therefore, this must be the healthy way to eat. Simon's classmates, who are into sports, make fun of his love of reading. Reading is for nerds, they tell him. Therefore, he gives up reading and signs up for football. Fallacy number 7. Appeal to pity. Or as it's also known, ad misericordiam. Example. The woman should not be found guilty. It would break her poor children's hearts to see their mother taken to prison. The fallacy is also known as the sob story, or the Galileo argument. The fallacy is committed when someone tries to win an argument by exploiting the other person's feelings of pity or guilt. This is a specific type of appeal to emotion. Often, when deciding a person's guilt or innocence per se, the feelings of relatives or even of victims are quite irrelevant. The form of the fallacy. X is true because, not X, would be too sad a state of affairs. More examples. This election I will vote for candidate X. She has been trying to run for parliament for the past 20 years and, lately, she has been diagnosed with cancer. John should get promoted this year. He has been going through a difficult time at home. Fallacy number 8. Appeal to force. Or as it's also known, argumentum ad baculum. Example. I am right. Agree with me, or I will break your legs. The fallacy. Might is right. The fallacy is committed when either force, or the threat of force, is used in an attempt to justify a conclusion. The form of the fallacy. X is true. Either you accept it, or you will get hurt. More examples. I know it is not part of your duties, but from now on you also need to start cleaning toilets. If you don't, I will have to start looking for someone to take your place. You will either spend the day studying or you will be grounded for the next 3 months. Fallacy number 9. Irrelevant conclusion. Or as it's also known, ignoratio elenchi. Example. Polar bears can't be dangerous because they are cute. The fallacy. An irrelevant conclusion happens when the conclusion proved by the author is not the one the author initially tried to prove. The form of the fallacy. X, therefore Y, where X is irrelevant in concluding that Y. More examples. Mafia members are good with children because they are good with their own children. Fiber is healthy for you. Therefore, eating fibrous cardboard is healthy for you. Once again, thanks for watching. You can help us keep going by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our content. For more videos and articles about philosophy, visit philosophymt.com.